Chapter 13. Day 2. 0600 hours. Cameron opened up his eyes to discover that the sun had risen. Birds were chirping, and the smell of burned wood and sulfur filled the air. Cameron blinked and cleared his throat as he looked down and saw the top of Maria's sleeping head resting on his chest. "Oh, God," Cameron whispered as he leaned his head back and looked up at the blue sky. "It wasn't a dream." Cameron groaned and looked to his right. He gasped as he found himself staring into the thin face of a widely smiling, brown-haired and blue-eyed man. "Good morning," the person declared with a Dutch accent. "I hope you don't mind. I thought it would be nice to snuggle up for the night." "No!" Cameron shouted as he forcefully backed into Maria, waking her up in the process. "Go!" "What?" Maria groggily asked as she pushed herself up in the bed of the truck. She looked over at the brown-haired Dutchman, and her eyes grew wide. "Sweet mother of God, who the fuck is that?" No, cuddle buddies." The Dutchman held up his hands and smiled. "No need for hostilities. I wish you no harm." "Like hell!" Cameron shouted. "You just spooned me all night." "Well, yes." The Dutchman relented and cocked his head. "But there is no better way to make friends than with a mild bit of spoony fun, no?" Maria pulled out her pistol and pushed Cameron backward, thrusting the barrel of the weapon against the man's head. No need for shooting," the man declared as he moved his head out of the way of the gun. Maria pulled the trigger too late, and the bullet ripped through the side of the truck. The Dutchman looked down at the hole and then up to Maria and pursed his lips together. "Wow." He let out a nervous laugh and raised his eyebrows. "Feisty, I see. Please, don't do that again. I promise I am not here to kill you." "Then you better fucking go right now," Maria screeched as she corrected her aim. "You have literally 3 seconds to—" "Can we be friends?" the Dutchman asked with a warm smile. "I promise I am a good friend, a good fighter, too. I won't let you guys down." Maria aimed her pistol to the sky and pulled the trigger again. The Dutchman nodded and quickly got to his feet. "By the way, thank you for the warmth last night. I have been alone this whole time, and I needed a little spoon. Thank you." He saluted to the duo and hurried out of the bed of the truck, sprinting toward the woods. Cameron blinked and turned to Maria. "What the fuck just happened?" Cameron's mouth hung open, and his eyes were wide as he stared at Maria. "Like, did that really just happen?" "I should have killed him," Maria sighed. "That was way too weird." "I agree," Cameron nodded. "Never in my life." Maria lowered her head into her hands and groaned. The two of them were covered in dew and the sweat and grime from the day before. Neither felt clean. "This place is too weird," Maria said softly as she looked up at Cameron. "Just too damn weird." "Tell you what," Cameron said as he leaned into the woman. "Let's go find a river or a creek or something and get cleaned up. That'll help get our heads straight. Then we can find food and eat and plan our next move." "Can't we just sleep?" Maria closed her eyes and turned her head toward the sky. Cameron chuckled and pulled her back. The two laid on the bed of the truck and for a moment said nothing. "So, last night happened," Cameron finally said, turning to look at Maria. "Yup," Maria replied, not moving her eyes from the clouds above them. She didn't say anything else regarding the night before, and Cameron decided he wouldn't either. She did, however, roll over and nuzzle her face into his shoulder. He didn't mind that. "What are we going to do, Cameron?" she asked with a sigh. "How are we going to survive all this?" "We just are," Cameron replied optimistically. "As long as we have each other's backs, we have nothing else to fear." "Yeah? Except crazy skinny Dutchmen looking for free cuddles?" Maria laughed as she spoke, and Cameron groaned. Sure, it was funny, but she hadn't been the one who had been unknowingly spooned all night by a stranger. "Come on," Cameron said, patting Maria's arm. "Up and at 'em. Let's get out of here." Maria reluctantly and lazily sat up, nodding as she did so. The two got dressed and hopped out of the bed of the truck. They hurried to the front, where they worked quickly to clean the glass out of the seat and then hopped in. Cameron started the truck and drove forward toward the base of the next mountain. He did not recall seeing a body of water in the area they had driven through the night before. As they drove, Maria silently looked out her window. "Something wrong?" Cameron asked as he looked over and nudged her shoulder. She looked back at him and shook her head. "No." She gave him a smile and then looked back out her window. I just
Can't believe I had sex with you on live TV.
Cameron thought about that statement for a moment and turned his gaze to the front of the truck. He wondered if she meant she couldn't believe she had sex with him, or she couldn't believe she had sex on live TV. Yeah, I kinda just forgot about the whole TV thing. Cameron shrugged as he navigated toward the trees. I mean, what's the matter anyway? Like, how many people are watching us of all the... He glanced up at the player count. 537 players. We're not that interesting.
Julio, how many people are watching me right now?
Maria suddenly asked. Julio was the name of her guide, and Cameron had heard her talk to him a few times. Cameron bit his lip and decided he was interested as well. Grizzly, are you there?
Hey there, buddy. Haven't heard from you in a while.
Grizzly replied.
I see you've been having some fun.
Right. Cameron glanced over at Maria and rolled his eyes. So, do you know how many people are watching me right now?
Well, let's see here.
Grizzly replied.
Looks like you have 359,863 subscribers. Not bad. Making that money, kid.
Whoa! Cameron quickly looked at Maria again and saw that she was making the same expression as he.
How many?
Maria asked. Like 360,000, Cameron said. How about you?
1,000,000 something,
Maria replied.
Over 1,000,000 people saw us fuck last night.
Surely they'd have cut that out, Cameron replied. They can't just...
Nope. Nearly all of Maria's subscribers tuned in. 90% of yours as well,
Grizzly said.
We saw everything, kid.
Wait, you watched too? Cameron spat. Dude, that's just wrong.
Sorry, kid,
Grizzly said.
It's my job.
Great,
Maria sighed as she looked out her window again.
I'm a porn star now.
Cameron couldn't help but laugh. The fact that hundreds of thousands of his own fans watched his every move, paired with the idea that potentially millions of Maria's fans as well, left him feeling a bit unsettled. He felt that his privacy was completely gone, and he'd never make another move without being watched ever again. Let's just find a damn river, Cameron sighed. Getting clean will make all the difference. It may help us care a little less about what's happened here. Maria nodded, and Cameron stopped the truck at the tree line. The two sat in silence for a few minutes before Cameron finally reached out and opened his door. He looked over at Maria, who smiled thinly at him and then opened her door. They got out of the truck and stretched their bodies. Cameron yawned as he did so, feeling that things were getting a little bit awkward between them.
Come on,
Maria called out as she walked into the woods.
Let's go see what we can find.
They found themselves back in the forest, back beneath the canopy of leaves. Cameron didn't mind. The woods seemed to have become his unofficial home on Happy Island. They looked around and listened as they walked, hoping to hear the sound of running water. So, are we good? Cameron asked softly as they walked. Maria glanced over at him and gently laughed to herself.
Yes, Cameron, she replied with a patronizing tone. We're good. Just give me a little space to process everything, okay? Yesterday was so weird. It all just become so real today. Honestly, I was hoping to wake up this morning to find it had all been a dream.
Maria snickered to herself and looked up at the canopy.
Clearly, it isn't.
I hoped the same thing when I woke up, Cameron replied in a low voice. I mean, I wasn't upset that it wasn't one. A dream, I mean.
Yeah.
Maria crunched forward through the leaves, rifle shouldered and eyes peeled.
It sure isn't.
The two walked for what could have been 30 minutes before they both finally stopped dead in their tracks. They heard something that compelled them to wait and listen.
People,
Maria whispered.
They sound happy.
Oh, God, Cameron replied as his eyes scanned the trees. You remember the elves in the book The Hobbit?
Sorry, I didn't read English literature very much,
Maria replied sarcastically. Singing, dancing, jolly creatures in the woods, Cameron informed her. Usually at night, but what I hear, that reminds me of them. The voices were indeed singing. Cameron could hear laughing and uncharacteristic carrying on. It sounded like a party in the middle of Happy Island.
What do we do?
Maria asked, leaning closer to Cameron.
There's a lot of them. Maybe we should just...
Welcome, friends! A voice suddenly declared from above them. Cameron and Maria both looked up and raised their weapons toward the body of a 30-something-year-old man, waving at them and smiling as he sat perched on a large tree limb. Oh, please! He cocked his head, but the warm smile did not fade. We are of no danger to you. You look weary, friends. Please, accept my invitation into my camp. Let us feed you. Let us tend to your wounds and refresh you, that you may find comfort in our presence." Cameron looked at Maria, and Maria mouthed the words, "What the fuck?" The jolly man climbed down the tree and let out a breath, raising his eyebrow as he approached the duo. "My name is Dennis." He placed a hand on each of their shoulders and enthusiastically nodded his head at the two of them. "These are my people. They are good people. We call ourselves the Eternials, for our belief is singular. Love, my friends, is eternal, and it is what we have come together as a community to believe in. If we share our love and enthusiasm in whatever way we are comfortable, in whatever way we relate to most, we will continue living our best lives. Come forth, let me shower you in comfort that you may truly find rest. Soothe yourselves in our warm baths. Rest in our pillow house. We are here only to serve." Half a dozen other smiling faces suddenly emerged from behind an assortment of trees. They held nothing in their hands, no guns or melee weapons or anything that would suggest they were out to cause harm. Cameron gave Maria a hesitant look, but she shrugged in response. She stepped forward, past Dennis and toward the trees where the happy-looking people had come from. Cameron looked up to Dennis, who met his gaze with a wide grin. "We are all friends here," he announced warmly as he stepped up to Cameron, "brought together by this terrible and magnificent game. Come, see what we are creating, and determine whether or not you wish to be a part of it." Dennis reached out his hand and gently pressed it against Cameron's back, guiding him forward. "We use our individual skills and collective knowledge to build a community. So far, it's just small huts and pillows. Lots of pillows." His body quivered as he mentioned pillows, mildly creeping Cameron out. "But soon enough, we will be constructing stone walls and digging shelters to survive the storm." "Survive the storm?" Cameron repeated. "You mean the one that was supposed to wipe out the coast last night? The one DJ talked about?" "The storm." Dennis nodded and continued guiding Cameron. "You see, those of us who have seen our pasts, who know where we came from, have seen nothing good. We do not want to return home. We want to build a better life here. We have the tools. We have the skills. Why shouldn't we?" "You want to stay here?" Cameron snorted. "In this game?" "Yes, Cameron," Dennis nodded and spoke softly. "By living out our lives here, we are accomplishing two things. One, and most importantly, we are ensuring that we continue living. And two, we are satisfying the desires of whoever sent us here, removing the extra people from the planet, the poor, the incarcerated, the sick, abandoned, and elderly. From what has been revealed to us, we have determined that all we are is an effort to entertain the rich and to control the population level." "In a day you determined that?" Cameron asked. "It's a lot to figure out for—" "We are many," Dennis smiled. "We have 2 complete parties here and are starting a third. A little bit has been revealed to each of us, but together we are starting to put together the truth like a jigsaw puzzle. I would love for you two to be a part of our third party." "We are already in a party," Cameron said. "Maria, me, and another man." "I very much hope you will consider switching parties," Dennis said as they passed into a clearing. "For the benefits of joining us are numerous." Cameron's eyes widened as he stepped into what looked like a fully functioning village. Wooden shacks were in the process of being constructed in a circle around a large communal bonfire that held pillows spaced evenly around it. People laughed and sang as they carried out preparing breakfast, or so it appeared to Cameron. He could smell bacon and eggs and fish. "Hope's Wharf, we call it." Dennis smiled as he extended his arms toward the village. "We want all who come to feel welcome and safe. We are preparing to construct our log walls today. It will take much effort and many resources, but soon enough we will be protected, at least from those who would wish harm upon us." "It seems happy," Cameron commented as they looked around. People seemed to dance as they walked, gliding through the camp and toward their duties. Cameron heard the sound of music accompanying the singing and clapping, humming and snapping. "We are happy." Dennis smiled and turned to Cameron. "Come, eat and be filled, and then wash the weariness from your body. I have a cushion prepared for you and your friend. Dennis guided Cameron past the bonfire and toward a table that had been constructed from a split log. Behind the table was a chubby woman, smiling and humming as she seemed to be combining ingredients into meals. Cameron looked at her and raised an eyebrow. Is she a tinkerer? Cameron asked. Don't ask me, Dennis replied with a shake of his head. Talk to her. I only founded this place, brought the people together. I do not speak for them. Address her. Ask her whatever you wish. Cameron nodded slowly and looked at the woman. Hey there, Cameron said uneasily. I'm Cameron. What's your name? The woman glanced up at him for a moment and held a finger up, indicating he needed to wait. Cameron nodded and pursed his lips together. After a moment, the woman set down a plate of bacon and eggs, looked up at Cameron, and forced a smile. Gertrude, she spat with an Irish accent. Her tone was not unkind, just rushed. But you can call me Jerry. That's what my mum called me anyways. Seems the old hag wasn't too keen on using my real name. Oh, shit, I'm sorry, Cameron replied, not knowing what else to say. Not your fault, lad. She turned around and grabbed something from a shelf behind her, bumping the table with her rather large ass. What can I do for you? I just wanted to know if you were a tinkerer. Well, don't you feckin' see me tinkering here, sonny? Jerry asked, again not in an unkind manner. I've been tinkering all morning, sweating me arse off, making feckin' bacon and eggs all for a measly 2 experience points apiece. At this rate, I'd have to feed everybody here 20 times to gain a level from this shite. Dennis nudged Cameron with his elbow and smiled widely, trying to hold back his laughter. Cameron looked mildly uncomfortable, but did his best to hide it. Boy! Jerry turned her head and belted, slamming an open palm against the table she was working at. Boy, where you at? Here, Miss Jerry. An innocent and exhausted-sounding voice shouted as he hurried up with a tray of ingredients. Sorry, ma'am. I couldn't find Jasmine. The boy couldn't have been over 15 years old. He was black, bald, and had an American accent. What do you mean you couldn't find Jasmine? Jerry wailed as she turned and gently whacked the kid in the back of his head with her spatula. Well, this here camp is the size of a hare's arse. To find anybody, all you have to do is stop and look around. Sorry, ma'am. The boy lowered his head and peeked over at Cameron. Who's this? Some stranger? Jerry shrugged. Mind your manners in his company. He's our guest. The boy turned toward Cameron, flashing a smile in his direction. Hey, man, he chirped politely, reaching out for a handshake. I'm Brendan, but everyone calls me Pag. It's a nickname from back home. Nice to meet you. Cameron grabbed Pag's hand, but jerked back as Pag suddenly released a small lima bean-sized fireball into Cameron's palm. Pag burst into laughter, and Cameron cursed, instinctively holding his hand. The fire had been too small to harm him, but it scared the tits off him nonetheless. What the actual fuck, dude? Cameron snapped as he looked up at the boy. He glanced over at Dennis, who was glaring angrily at Pag. The Belgian man somehow had produced a notepad and was shaking his head and muttering to himself as he quickly scrawled something on the paper. Pag laughed, but only for a moment. Jerry was quick to begin slapping his backside with her spatula, shouting every manner of curse his way as she did so. Pag yelped in surprise and quickly turned and ran away. Apologies for the lad, Jerry sighed as she watched him run away. Every time we get a newcomer, he tries his best to scare him off. The lad's got a screw loose, but he's a darling. Dennis finally flipped his notebook shut and let out a sigh. He took hold of Cameron's wrist and looked down at his palm. No damage is taken, I see, Dennis said to himself. All is well physically. Tell me, have your feelings toward us been altered in any way after that interaction? No. Cameron shook his head and snorted a small laugh. He was just a kid being a kid. Everything's fine. Well, squeeze this anyway. Dennis held a palm-sized pillow out toward Cameron. It reminded him of a stress ball. Cameron eyed the Belgian man strangely, but grabbed the tiny pillow and squeezed it in his hand. Surprisingly, he felt a little better. Hot drink will surely follow. Dennis smiled and pressed his hand against Cameron's back. Come, let us get you to the water that you may refresh yourself, and then we can tell stories over the fire as we sit and nourish our weary bodies with breakfast and tea. Cameron nodded, and Dennis guided them away from Jerry, smiling at her as they left her company. The two walked east, past the bonfire, and toward the sound of flowing water. Cameron watched as a few people worked on raising the buildings around him and saw a small group of bow-wielders led by a thin, pale-skinned woman walk into the forest. That is Jasmine, Dennis declared, pointing out the thin woman. She is my second in command here and head of the hunters. A wonderful friend, a true leader. She appreciates a good pillow, a quality of which I am very fond. Rather sneaky, and has excellent aim as well." Cameron nodded as Jasmine's group disappeared into the woods and stopped walking as he and Dennis arrived at the water's edge. "Please, refresh yourself." Dennis clasped his hands together and smiled. "If there is anything you need, do not hesitate to inform me or my people. We all take care of each other here. Nobody wants for anything if we can help it." "Thanks, Dennis." Cameron nodded and turned toward the water. "Oh, please." Dennis shook his head and held out his hands. "It is my pleasure. And we are friends now. Please, call me Floof."